I never thought the hands that once held mine with love would one day push me off a cliff. Our son, our only child, tried to kill us. And as I lay there broken at the bottom of that cliff, the sound of the waves crashing in my ears, my husband leaned close and whispered the words that would save our lives. Pretend we're dead. My name is Eleanor Brooks, and this is the story of how the child we raised with love and sacrifice tried to erase us from his life, forever. It all began like any ordinary morning, quiet, calm, filled with the illusion of peace that only families living with secrets can know. The cliffs of Northbridge were shining under the pale sun, their edges sharp and cold, overlooking a sea that never forgave mistakes. I had no idea that the man standing beside me, my husband Henry, and I were just moments away from betrayal so deep it would tear through our souls. For 32 years, Henry and I had lived for one reason: our son Ethan. He was our pride, our purpose, our proof that love could create something good in this world. From his first steps to his first job, we were there. We gave him everything: a good home, education, comfort, care. But the one thing we couldn't give him was contentment. Somewhere along the way, Ethan changed. First, I thought it was stress. He was building his own company, trying to make a name for himself. But slowly, something in his eyes hardened. Ambition turned into greed, and greed into distance. He stopped calling as often, stopped visiting unless he needed something. Then one night, everything began to make sense. I was passing by his old room when I heard his voice, low, sharp, and angry, on the phone. "I told you I'll get the documents. They trust me. Once the properties in my name were done. No more calls, understood?" I froze. My heart started racing. He was talking about us, about our home, about his parents, as if we were obstacles in his way. When Henry came home that evening, I told him everything. He refused to believe me. "Ellie," he said softly, "you must have misheard. Ethan would never." But the truth was already crawling beneath our floorboards, eating away at everything we built. A few days later, Ethan came by, all smiles, like nothing had happened. He hugged us, brought flowers, and said, "You both need a break. Let's go somewhere beautiful like Northbridge Cliffs. Remember, Dad? You proposed to Mom there." It sounded sweet. Too sweet. I wanted to say no, but Henry smiled. "It'll be nice," he said. "Let's go." And so we did. That morning, the air was crisp and cold. Seagulls screamed overhead. I remember holding Henry's arm, feeling his warmth through his jacket, thinking about the life we'd built. Ethan walked a few steps ahead, silent. Too silent. We reached the edge of the cliff, the same spot where Henry had knelt down all those years ago and promised me forever. I smiled at the memory, and then I heard it. Ethan's voice. Quiet. Trembling. "I'm sorry." Before I could turn, a violent shove sent me forward. My scream tore through the air as my feet slipped. Henry grabbed me, but his balance broke, and together we fell. The world became a blur of wind and water. The roar of the ocean swallowed everything. Then blackness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on wet sand. My body screamed with pain. My leg was twisted, my head bleeding. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, until I saw Henry beside me, barely breathing. The realization hit like lightning. Our son had tried to kill us. I looked up toward the cliff, but Ethan was gone. The sky was darkening, and the tide was rising fast. I crawled closer to Henry, shaking him, whispering his name through tears. He opened his eyes weakly and said something I'll never forget. "Eleanor, pretend we're dead." I stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean?" He coughed, his lips trembling. "If he thinks we survived, he'll come back to finish it. Let him think we're gone." It was a terrifying thought, to hide from our own child. But Henry was right. The man who had pushed us wouldn't hesitate to do it again. So we lay there in the sand, side by side, unmoving, letting the cold waves wash over our legs. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. My body went numb. Above us, the sea whispered like it was keeping our secret. When the night finally came, I dragged Henry, half-conscious, toward a small cave I'd spotted along the rocks. My arms burned, my legs ached, but I refused to stop. Inside it was dark and damp, but at least it was shelter. We huddled together, shivering, the sound of crashing waves echoing through the stone walls. Henry squeezed my hand weakly. "Ellie, we'll survive this," he whispered. "And when we do, we'll make him answer for what he's done." Tears slipped down my face, mixing with salt water and blood. I looked at the man I'd loved all my life, broken, bleeding, and still thinking of protecting me. And I swore that night I would not die until the world knew the truth. Somewhere above those cliffs, our son probably sat in his car, believing we were gone forever. But he was wrong. We were still alive. And we were coming back. The night after the fall was the longest night of my life. Every sound, every crash of a wave, every whisper of wind made my heart race. My entire body ached, but fear kept me awake. Somewhere above that cliff, my son, the boy I gave birth to, had left us for dead. Henry was fading fast. His leg was broken and his face had turned pale. I tore a piece of my dress and wrapped it around his wound, whispering prayers under my breath. "Hold on, Henry," I kept saying. "We'll make it. We just have to make it till morning." When dawn came, the sky was washed in gray and gold. The world looked calm, peaceful, as if nothing horrible had happened just hours ago. But I knew peace was a lie now. I stepped out of the cave and looked up at the cliffs above. It felt impossible, like a wall that separated us from the rest of the world. "We can't stay here," Henry murmured behind me, his voice weak but firm. "He might come back." He was right. If Ethan returned to check, he couldn't find us alive. We had to disappear completely. I spotted a small fishing boat far out on the water and an idea sparked. There was a small harbor a few miles east. We'd visited it years ago during summer. If we could make it there, maybe someone could help us, without alerting the police yet. Because if Ethan really wanted us dead, he might have friends involved. We had to be careful. I found a long stick and helped Henry stand, letting him lean on me. Step by step, we made our way along the rocky shore, hiding whenever we heard voices or saw movement above. My heart pounded with every step. The sea breeze burned my cuts, but pain no longer mattered. Only survival did. By midday, the sun was blazing and we were exhausted. I spotted an old shed near the shoreline, probably used by local fishermen. We hid inside. It smelled of salt and old rope, but it was quiet, safe. I found a cracked mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. My face was bruised, my hair matted with sand and blood. For the first time, I truly looked like what I felt, broken. Henry sat down heavily on a crate. "Eleanor, why?" he whispered. "Why would our son do this?" I didn't know. But I intended to find out. I searched through my torn bag. Somehow my phone had survived the fall, though the screen was cracked. There was no signal near the cliffs, but maybe once we reached the harbor I could find one. I needed to see Ethan's face again. Needed to know what he was doing while we bled and hid. That night we rested in the shed. I stayed awake, listening to the soft rhythm of Henry's breathing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face at the moment he pushed us, calm, determined, cold. By the next morning, Henry could barely move. "Go without me," he said, his voice faint. "Get help." But I refused. "We started this life together," I said, clutching his hand. "We'll end it together, but not today." I found a long piece of rope and tied it around his waist, helping him walk as we made our way along the coast. It took us hours to reach the harbor. My arms felt like lead, my throat was dry. But when I finally saw the small fishing boats bobbing on the water, I almost cried. An old fisherman spotted us first. His eyes widened when he saw our condition. "Good heavens, what happened to you too?" he shouted, running toward us. I wanted to tell him everything, but Henry squeezed my hand before I could speak. "Please," he said weakly. "We fell. We just need water. And somewhere quiet to rest." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Come with me. My cottage is nearby." He helped us into his small home, a cozy place smelling of wood smoke and sea salt. His name was Mason, a widower who lived alone. When he asked about family, I simply said, "We have none left." The words nearly broke me, but they were safer that way. Mason gave us food, water, and a small room to rest in. That night, while Henry slept, I finally got a phone signal. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. The screen lit up and there he was, Ethan, smiling in a new photo, standing beside a tall, elegant woman I'd never seen before. The caption read, "New beginnings. Building the future we deserve." My heart sank. He had moved on so quickly, so easily, as if his parents had never existed. I scrolled through his posts and then something caught my eye. A company event announcement. It mentioned Brooks and Company. Properties. That was our last name. I clicked it open and froze. The company wasn't new. It was built using our home address. Our property was listed as company headquarters. That's when it hit me. He hadn't just tried to kill us for money. He needed our house, our land, to secure some kind of business deal. And for that he needed us gone. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I forced myself to stay quiet. Henry was still too weak. We had to plan carefully. The next morning, I told Mason that we needed to leave soon. He offered to drive us to town, but I said no, we couldn't be seen yet. Instead, I asked if he could lend us some old clothes and a small radio. When he left to get supplies, I turned to Henry. He's building something, I said. He's using our name, our house, everything we worked for. Henry's eyes darkened. Then he's not our son anymore. We sat there in silence for a long time, listening to the distant hum of the sea. The world had grown smaller, colder, but one thing kept me standing. Revenge wasn't our goal. Truth was, if Ethan thought we were dead, we'd let him live with that lie. Until the moment we stepped out of the shadows and took back everything he stole. I didn't know how or when, but I promised myself that night he would see us again. And when he did, it wouldn't be as the parents he betrayed. It would be as the ghosts he created. It's strange how fast life can change. One day you're a mother, worrying about your son's happiness, his meals, his dreams. The next, you're hiding in a stranger's cottage, pretending to be dead, while your son builds a future on the ashes of your life. 3 days had passed since the fall. Henry's leg was still swollen, but thanks to Mason's quiet kindness, he was healing. The old fisherman never asked too many questions. Maybe he sensed that our silence came from deep pain. At night, I would sit by the small window looking out at the sea, feeling its pull. It was both our enemy and our witness. I couldn't stop hearing Ethan's voice in my head. I'm sorry. Those 2 words haunted me. Sorry for what? For killing us? For betraying us? Or for being caught between greed and guilt? Henry stirred in bed. You're not sleeping again, he murmured. I turned to him. How can I? He's out there living freely, using our name. Henry's eyes were tired but steady. Then we don't let him win. We stay quiet. We watch. We wait. It sounded simple, but how do you watch the world when you're supposed to be dead? That's when I had an idea. Mason had an old radio and a computer his granddaughter sometimes used when she visited. I asked if I could borrow it for a bit, told him I wanted to listen to news to distract myself. He smiled kindly. Of course, dear. But don't stay up too late. The sea winds mess with your mind. That night I used the old laptop. It took forever to start, but when it did, I typed Ethan Brooks into the search bar. Dozens of results appeared. Articles, social media posts, photos. Ethan was thriving publicly. His company, Brooks and Company Properties, was launching a massive new housing project called the Ridgeview Estates. It was being built right on our land. I clicked through the photos, my heart pounding. Our backyard, the garden I had planted, was gone. Bulldozers, workers, construction signs, all under his company logo. And beside him in every photo was that same woman, tall, elegant, perfect. The captions called her business partner and fiancée Victoria Hale. Fiancée. The word stabbed deeper than I expected. Ethan hadn't even told us he was seeing someone seriously. And now she was standing beside him, smiling for cameras, while I sat bruised and broken in hiding. I leaned back, trembling. Henry. He's building our home into his empire. Henry didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, the way it always got when he was planning something. Then we start from there. The next morning, Mason told us he needed to head into town for supplies. I asked if I could come along, said I wanted to send a letter to a friend. He hesitated but agreed. I wrapped a scarf around my face, borrowed one of his old coats, and kept my head down the entire trip. The town looked the same, yet it felt like another world. People laughed, cars honked, shops buzzed. Nobody knew that 2 people walking among them were supposed to be dead. I asked Mason to drop me near the old public library, a place few visited anymore. Once inside, I found a computer and logged in again. I searched for property records, something Henry used to handle. My hands shook as I typed, But when the files loaded, my breath caught. The house deed, our home, had been transferred 2 weeks before the accident. Not to Ethan alone. To Brooks and Hale Properties. My heart turned to ice. Victoria Hale. She wasn't just his business partner. She was behind this, maybe even the one who pushed him toward this madness. Henry was right. We needed to wait, but I couldn't sit still. I had to know more. When I got back, Mason was unloading supplies. He smiled at me kindly. "You seem stronger today." I nodded, forcing a smile. Just trying to move forward. That night I told Henry everything. About the deed, about Victoria. He listened quietly, then said, "She's the key. If we want to destroy what they've built, we go through her." The plan was forming slowly, painfully. We couldn't confront them yet. We had no proof of the attempted murder, and if we revealed ourselves too early, Ethan could claim it was an accident, that we slipped. No one would believe a dead couple's story without evidence. So we stayed low. Mason thought we were an old married pair running from debts, and we let him believe that. Weeks passed. Henry began walking again, though with a limp. I collected old newspapers, bits of information, anything that mentioned Brooks and Company. Then one morning, Mason returned from town with a small envelope. "For you," he said. It came with the mail. No name, but addressed to this house. My blood ran cold. No one knew we were here. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single piece of paper typed neatly. No signature. Just 4 words. "I know you're alive." I stared at it, my mind spinning. Who could have sent it? Mason? No, he looked just as confused. Ethan? But how would he know where we were? Henry took the letter, reading it twice. "Someone's watching," he whispered. "Someone who knows the truth." We didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow moved. By morning we made a decision. We couldn't hide any longer. If someone knew we were alive, it was only a matter of time before Ethan found out too. "Ellie," Henry said, gripping my hand, "it's time we go back. But this time we go as ghosts. Quiet, careful, invisible." I nodded. The fear inside me was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a survivor. And our son was about to learn that the dead can still speak. And when they do, the living listen. The day we decided to return to our town, the air felt heavier, as if the sea itself tried to warn us not to go. Mason helped us pack a few things, unaware of what we were really walking back into. When we thanked him, he smiled kindly and said, "You two take care of each other. The world's not as kind as it once was." He had no idea how true those words were. Henry and I took a small bus into Northbridge City. I wore a plain coat, a dark scarf, and glasses to disguise my face. Henry leaned on a walking stick. We looked like any other elderly couple traveling home after years away. But inside, every heartbeat felt like an explosion. We weren't going home. We were walking straight into the past and into danger. The first shock came as soon as the bus turned into our old neighborhood. Our street was unrecognizable. Where our house once stood, the cozy blue cottage with white roses at the gate, there was now a towering construction site surrounded by metal fences. Heavy machines roared. Workers moved like ants. A huge banner stretched across the fence. Brooks and Hale Properties, the Ridgeview Estates. Luxury living, timeless elegance. My chest tightened. That was our name. Our land. Our life. Henry's hand trembled as he gripped mine. "He destroyed it," he whispered. "Everything we built." I could barely breathe. Watching the cranes move over what used to be our kitchen and garden felt like watching someone dig up our graves. We got off the bus at the next stop and slowly walked back toward the site. There were guards, but none of them knew us, or at least not anymore. We stood behind a crowd of people taking photos. They were admiring the new model homes, unaware they were standing on stolen soil. Suddenly, the crowd began to buzz with excitement. A black car pulled up. The door opened and there he was. Ethan. Our son. He looked different. Confident, polished, powerful. His once soft eyes were sharp now, cold like glass. He wore a tailored suit and a gold watch that glimmered in the sun. And beside him, holding his arm, was Victoria Hale. She was everything I'd imagined and more. Tall, poised, with dark red lipstick and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She had the kind of presence that drew attention, and Ethan looked proud beside her. Cameras flashed as they waved to the reporters. A young journalist called out, "Mr. Brooks, can you tell us how it feels to honor your parents' legacy with this project?" Ethan's smile didn't even flicker. "My parents taught me everything I know," he said smoothly. "This project is a tribute to them, to their memory. To their memory." I felt Henry stiffen beside me. He was shaking not with weakness this time but with rage. I squeezed his hand tightly before he could step forward. "Not yet," I whispered. We watched silently as Ethan and Victoria entered the building. The reporters followed. My stomach twisted. Hearing our son talk about honoring us, after throwing us off a cliff, was more painful than the fall itself. We followed them from a distance for the rest of the day, careful to stay unseen. I used an old phone Mason had given me to take photos, proof that we were alive, and proof that Ethan had taken over our property. By evening, Ethan and Victoria left for a restaurant downtown. Henry and I sat in a small cafe across the street, watching through the window. They were laughing, drinking wine. Ethan looked happy, genuinely happy, as if the ghosts of his parents were just a faint memory. But then, something unexpected happened. Victoria leaned close, whispering something to him. Ethan's face changed. His smile faded. He looked afraid. I watched closely as she touched his hand, not gently but with quiet control. He nodded, eyes down. For a brief second he looked like a boy again. A boy trapped. Henry noticed too. "She's the one," he murmured. "She's behind it all." Maybe he was right. Maybe Ethan wasn't the mastermind. Maybe he was just the weapon. Later that night, we followed them back to an upscale apartment complex, the kind only the rich could afford. I memorized the building name, Silvergate Towers. We couldn't go in, of course, but we didn't need to, not yet. We rented a small cheap motel room nearby under fake names. It was filthy, but it had one thing we needed: proximity. From the window, I could see the entrance to Silvergate Towers. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About the boy who once cried when he scraped his knee. About the man who now smiled while standing over our grave. And about the woman who whispered in his ear while he betrayed the people who gave him life. Around midnight, I heard Henry's voice softly in the dark. "Ellie, if we can prove he did this, what then?" I turned to him. "Then we tell the world. Not for revenge. For truth." He nodded, staring out the window. "The truth has a way of coming back, doesn't it?" "Yes," I said quietly. "And when it does, it hits harder than any fall." The next morning I went out to get breakfast. When I came back, there was an envelope slipped under our door. My heart skipped a beat. I picked it up, my hands shaking. No return address. No name. Just 3 words written in elegant handwriting. "He's not alone." I froze. Henry looked up from the bed, his face tightening. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," I whispered, my throat dry. "But someone knows who we are, and they're warning us." For the first time since the fall, I felt something shift. Someone out there knew the truth. Maybe even wanted to help us. But who? As I stared at the note, a plan began to take shape. One that would bring us closer to Ethan, to Victoria, and to the dark secret behind everything. Because if Ethan wasn't alone in his crime, it meant the betrayal ran deeper than we ever imagined. And this time we weren't just fighting for survival. We were fighting to uncover the truth, even if it destroyed what little was left of our family. The morning after the mysterious note arrived, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. Every creak in the hallway, every footstep outside our door made my heart leap. Henry tried to calm me down, but even he looked uneasy. We had survived a fall from death. We had escaped betrayal. But this was something new. A shadow that moved quietly, knowing more about us than we knew about them. Henry unfolded the note again, studying the handwriting. "Elegant," he murmured. "Someone educated. Someone close to Ethan or Victoria." I nodded. Maybe someone in their office? A worker who saw something. We couldn't just sit and wonder. So we decided to act. That afternoon, we went back to the Ridgeview Estates site, pretending to be an elderly couple looking to buy a house. The young receptionist smiled politely, unaware she was speaking to the very woman whose name had once been on the deed. "Welcome to Ridgeview Estates," she chirped. Would you like to view our sample home? Yes, dear, I said, forcing a smile. We'd love to see what this place offers. As she handed us a brochure, I noticed a photo on the wall, Ethan shaking hands with Victoria in front of the nearly finished estate. But behind them stood another man. Gray suit, sharp jawline, smiling. I nudged Henry. Who's that? The receptionist looked up. Oh, that's Mr. Daniel Crow. He's the main investor. The project wouldn't exist without him. Daniel Crow. The name sent a chill through me. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Later, at the motel, Henry searched online using Mason's old tablet. Here, he said after a while. Daniel Crow, CEO of Crow Holdings. Real estate magnate. Been in the business for decades. Rumors say he's ruthless. I took the tablet and zoomed in on his photo, and then my stomach dropped. Behind that perfect smile was a face I recognized, older now but unmistakable. He was at our anniversary party, I whispered. He knew Ethan when he was still in college. He used to come by the house. I thought he was just a friend. Henry's eyes darkened. He wasn't a friend. He was planting seeds. I understood what he meant. Daniel Crow must have seen Ethan's potential and his weaknesses. Maybe he had promised him power, wealth, success. Maybe he had whispered poison into our son's ear until Ethan started believing his parents were standing in his way. And Victoria, she must have been part of it all along. It made sense now, the way she held Ethan's hand like she owned him, the way his eyes dropped when she spoke. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was a leash. That night I couldn't sleep again. I kept hearing Henry's words replaying in my head. He destroyed everything we built. I thought of Ethan as a little boy, building towers of blocks on our kitchen floor, smiling proudly when I clapped. And now he built towers of steel and glass over the ruins of our home. Sometime around midnight, there was a soft knock on the door. I froze. Henry reached for the lamp, but I stopped him. We waited in silence. Another knock, gentle, almost polite. I crept closer. Who's there? I whispered. No answer. I looked through the peephole. A young woman stood in the hallway, wearing a black coat and holding a small envelope. Her eyes darted nervously back and forth. She slipped the envelope under our door and hurried away. Henry opened it carefully. Inside was a small flash drive and a note. Watch this. Don't trust anyone. A friend. I stared at the drive in disbelief. What if it's a trap? Or what if it's the truth? Henry replied. We plugged it into the tablet. A single video file appeared. Henry clicked play. The footage was grainy security camera footage from an office. The timestamp showed it was just 3 months ago. Ethan sat at a desk, head in his hands. Across from him sat Victoria and Daniel Crow. Victoria's voice was cold. Your parents signed the land over years ago, Ethan. You know that. What happens next is on you. Ethan looked up, his voice shaky. But it's wrong. They trusted me. Crow cut him off sharply. They were sentimental fools. If you want to be a leader, you have to stop thinking like a child. The deal's done. Ethan's jaw clenched. And if they find out? Victoria smiled faintly. They won't. Not if you do what needs to be done. Then Crow leaned forward, his tone low and menacing. You want your company, your power, your place at this table? Then make sure your past never comes back to haunt you. Ethan didn't reply. He just stared at them, his face pale and broken. The video ended there. Henry and I sat in silence, the air around us heavy. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was manipulation. Control. Our son had been caught in a web spun by people far more dangerous than we realized. I whispered, he didn't push us off that cliff because he wanted to kill us. He did it because he thought he had to. Henry clenched his fists. That doesn't make it right. No, I said softly. But it changes everything. We had proof now. A video showing that Ethan wasn't acting alone. That Crow and Victoria had forced him into this nightmare. But who had sent it to us? The woman in the hallway? Someone inside the company? Whoever it was, they knew where we were. They knew we were alive. Henry's voice broke the silence. Ellie, we have to move fast. If Crow finds out we've got this, he'll come for us. He was right. We couldn't stay in that motel. We needed to get to Mason's place, or anywhere safe. But before we could even start packing, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Leave town now. They know you're alive. My hands trembled as I showed it to Henry. He looked up, eyes wide. It started. I nodded slowly. Yes. And this time it's not just about survival. It's about justice. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket, my heart pounding. Because if our enemies wanted to silence us again, they were about to find out just how loud the truth could be. We didn't waste a second. Henry grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it into an old tin box, and wrapped it with one of his shirts. I shoved our few belongings into a bag, my fingers trembling as I zipped it shut. The motel room felt smaller now, like the walls themselves were closing in. Outside, the night was cold and heavy with fog. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every passing car made me flinch. We didn't know who had sent that message or how close they were. Only that someone dangerous knew we were alive. We slipped through the back alley, moving fast. Henry's limp slowed him down, but he kept pushing. Just a few more blocks, I whispered. Then we'll find a taxi. But we didn't make it that far. As we reached the corner near an old gas station, a black SUV pulled up across the street. Its windows were tinted, its engine low and smooth. The doors opened, two men in dark suits stepped out. Their faces were blank, professional, like they'd done this before. Henry's grip tightened around my hand. Run, he whispered. We darted down a side street, our footsteps echoing off the walls. I could hear them behind us. Fast, steady, closing in. My heart thundered. We turned down another alley, but it was a dead end. Henry looked around desperately. There was only one way out, up a rusty fire escape ladder. I grabbed it and climbed, ignoring the pain in my knees, the burn in my hands. Henry followed, breathing hard. When we reached the roof, the city spread out before us in a blur of lights and smoke. I turned back. The men were already climbing after us. Henry looked at me. Go. No. I grabbed his arm. We stayed together. Then out of nowhere, headlights flashed below. Another car screeched to a stop. A woman's voice shouted, "Get in." I looked down. It was the same woman who'd left the envelope. She waved frantically from the driver's seat. We didn't hesitate. Henry and I scrambled back down the opposite side of the building, our pursuers shouting as they reached the roof. We jumped the last few feet and ran to her car. The moment we slammed the doors shut, she hit the gas. Tires screeched and the SUV behind us swerved, trying to follow, but she took a sharp turn down a narrow road that only locals would know. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. After a few blocks, she finally slowed down, checking the rearview mirror. We lost them, she said. I turned to her, breathing hard. She looked to be in her early 30s, with sharp features and tired eyes that had seen too much. Her hands were steady on the wheel, though. This wasn't her first escape. Who are you? I asked. My name's Lila, she said. I used to work for Victoria Hale. Henry stared at her. Used to. Lila nodded. Until I found out what she really was. She pulled into an abandoned parking lot and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was thick with fear and questions. Lila turned toward us. I was Victoria's assistant for 2 years. I saw things, meetings with Daniel Crow, private conversations about your family, the property, the deals. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know how wrong it was until I saw that video. You sent it, I said quietly. She nodded. Yes. I copied it from the office server before they erased it. But that was just one file. There's more: contracts, recordings, proof that they planned everything. They manipulated Ethan. They turned him against you. My throat tightened. Why are you helping us? Her eyes softened. Because I lost my father the same way. Crow's company took everything from us. Our home, his savings, his life. He died believing it was his fault. It wasn't. I won't let them do the same to you. For the first time since we fell off that cliff, I felt a flicker of hope. Henry leaned forward. What do we do now? Lila opened her glove box and pulled out a small USB drive. This contains part of their financial data, offshore accounts, shell companies. If we can get this to the media, they'll be exposed. But we need to move fast. Crow has eyes everywhere. I looked at Henry. We can't go to the police. He owns them too. Lila nodded grimly. Exactly. The only way to win is to make the truth public at once. But we'll need access to a secure network. I know someone who can help. He's a journalist. As she drove us out of the city, the roads grew darker, quieter. I sat in the back seat, staring out at the passing trees. My mind was spinning with everything I'd learned, the manipulation, the lies, the control. Ethan wasn't innocent, but he wasn't the monster I'd believed either. He was a broken man caught between love and fear. Still, part of me couldn't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We drove through the night until we reached a small coastal town, one that reminded me painfully of the life we used to have. Lila parked behind a closed diner. "We'll rest here," she said. "Then I'll take you to him in the morning." Henry leaned back in his seat, exhausted. "Thank you, Lila," he murmured. She nodded. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't over." I stepped out of the car and looked toward the ocean. The waves were calm, silver under the moonlight. For a moment I could almost breathe again. But then my phone buzzed, the same unknown number. My stomach sank. I opened the message. "You can't hide forever, Mom." My breath caught. My knees nearly gave out. Henry rushed to me, grabbing the phone from my shaking hand. He stared at the screen, his face going pale. "He knows," he whispered. "Ethan knows." I looked out into the night, the waves crashing softly against the shore. Somewhere out there, my son was hunting us, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The truth was coming, but so was danger. And as I stood there, the wind tugging at my hair, I realized something I hadn't before. We were no longer just victims. We were witnesses, and witnesses are dangerous to people with secrets. This time, pretending to be dead wouldn't save us. Only the truth would. By the time the sun rose, the coastal town was bathed in gold. Seagulls cried above the waves, and the wind smelled of salt and seaweed. For a moment it looked like peace, but inside the diner where we sat, peace was the last thing on our minds. Lila sat across from us, stirring her coffee absently, eyes darting toward the windows every few seconds. "We can't stay long," she said quietly. "Crow's people are everywhere. They'll find us if we wait." Henry leaned forward, his hands trembling slightly. "You said there's a journalist. Someone we can trust." She nodded. "His name's Ben Price. He used to work for the Herald, but after exposing a major corporate cover-up, he went underground. He runs an independent channel now. If anyone can get the truth out fast, it's him." "Where is he?" I asked. "About an hour from here. I've already called him." "He's waiting." We finished our coffee and stepped outside. The sky was overcast now, the waves turning restless. As Lila started the car, a strange unease filled my chest, the kind that comes before a storm. The drive was quiet. I watched the sea fade into endless gray as we followed the narrow road inland. Every few minutes, Lila checked her mirrors. Henry sat in silence, staring out the window, lost in thoughts too heavy to share. I kept replaying Ethan's message in my mind. "You can't hide forever, Mom." The words weren't angry. They were cold, controlled, almost like a warning. But a warning from whom? Himself? Or the people controlling him? When we reached the outskirts of a small industrial town, Lila turned into a warehouse lot. "He's inside," she said. Ben Price was not what I expected. He was young, maybe late 30s, with messy hair, a tired face, and eyes that seemed to see too much. His office was cluttered with old monitors and stacks of files. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you're the couple who came back from the dead." Henry gave a faint smile. "Something like that." Lila handed him the flash drive. "This has evidence against Crow and Victoria Hale. Financial records, blackmail files, even a video showing how they forced Ethan Brooks to betray his parents." Ben plugged it into his laptop and began scanning the files. His expression shifted from curiosity to shock. "Good God, this is huge. Offshore accounts, illegal land seizures, political bribes. This could take down half the city's elite." "Then help us," I said. "Please. The world needs to see this." He nodded slowly. "I will. But we'll need to be smart. If Crow knows you're alive, he'll do everything he can to stop this from coming out. Once I upload this, there's no turning back." "That's fine," I said firmly. "We've already fallen once. We're not afraid to fall again." Ben gave a small smile at that, the kind people give when they see courage in a place they didn't expect. "All right. Give me an hour." He began copying the files, fingers flying over the keyboard. Lila stood near the door keeping watch. Henry sat beside me, his hand in mine, silent but strong. For the first time in months I felt purpose again, not just survival but justice. But then everything changed. A low rumble echoed outside. Lila froze, peering through the window. "Oh no," she whispered. "SUVs. 3 of them." Ben looked up sharply. They must have traced the call. Before anyone could react, the warehouse lights flickered. Then glass shattered as a smoke canister rolled inside. The air filled with choking white fog. "Go!" Ben shouted. "Back exit." Coughing, eyes burning, Henry and I stumbled through the maze of boxes. Lila led the way, kicking open a side door that led to the loading dock. But as we stepped out into the cold air, a voice cut through the chaos. "Mom!" I froze. Through the fog I saw him. Ethan. He stood just beyond the smoke, dressed in black, his face pale, eyes wide with something between anger and sorrow. Behind him were Crow's men watching. But Ethan didn't look at them. He looked only at me. "Ethan," I breathed. "Don't move," he said quietly. His voice trembled. "They're watching. If you run, they'll shoot." Henry stepped in front of me. "What do you want, son?" "To finish what you started." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think I wanted any of this? You think I wanted you to die?" His voice broke. "They told me you'd ruin everything, that you'd go to the police, that they'd destroy me if I didn't act. I didn't know they'd actually push you over the edge." My heart twisted. "You still stood there and watched us fall." Tears glimmered in his eyes. "Because if I didn't, they'd have killed you anyway. Don't you see? Crow owns everything, the police, the media, the banks. I was just a pawn." Lila whispered. "He's not lying." Crow's men began to close in. Ethan turned sharply, raising a hand. "No. Stand down." They hesitated, confused. He turned back to us. "Give me the files. I can end this. I can fix it." Ben appeared beside us, coughing from the smoke. "If you really want to fix it, let me upload it. Let the truth speak for itself." Ethan's eyes darted between us, torn. Then a voice boomed from behind the cars. "Ethan, step away from them." It was Daniel Crow, tall, composed, his smile as sharp as ever. Victoria stood beside him, her red lips curved in that same perfect smirk. "Well," Crow said smoothly, "isn't this touching? A family reunion." "Stay away from them," Ethan shouted. Crow chuckled. "Or what? You'll betray me too? You forget who made you, boy." Ethan clenched his fists, trembling. "You used me. I gave you power," Crow said coldly. "And now you'll do what I tell you. End this, or I'll end them for real this time." The air crackled with tension. Henry stepped beside me, his hand squeezing mine. Lila's eyes darted toward Ben's laptop bag, where the files were. Then I saw it, the faint red light of a sniper scope on Ben's shoulder. "Down!" I screamed. The shot rang out. Glass shattered. Ben dropped to the floor, clutching his arm. Chaos erupted. Henry pulled me behind a crate. Ethan turned, yelling at the shooters. Crow barked orders. Smoke filled the air again. Lila grabbed the bag and pulled me toward the back door. "Go now." But as we ran, I looked back and saw Ethan standing in front of Crow, shouting something I couldn't hear. Crow raised a gun. Then another shot. Ethan fell. The world slowed. My scream tore through the chaos as Lila dragged me away, out into the night, into the cold sea air. The warehouse burned behind us. We stumbled to the car, Henry half carrying Ben, who was bleeding but alive. Lila started the engine and sped off. I turned back one last time. Through the flames, I saw Crow's silhouette still standing, and Ethan's motionless body on the ground. My heart shattered. He had betrayed us once, but in the end he saved us. The courtroom was silent. You could hear the faint ticking of the clock as the judge adjusted his glasses. My son, our own flesh and blood, stood before us in handcuffs. His head was bowed low, but I could still see the defiance hiding behind his trembling lips. The lawyer had just finished reading out the evidence, the life insurance papers, the forged signatures, the GPS tracking that placed him at the cliff that night. The truth was no longer a mystery. It was wound raw and open in front of everyone. When the judge asked if we wanted to press charges, my husband looked at me. His eyes, tired and wet with tears, searched mine. There was no anger left in them, only grief. Grief for the boy we had raised, for the man he had become, and for the love that had turned into something unrecognizable. I hesitated, my voice trembling as I spoke. "No," I said quietly. "We don't want revenge. We just want our son to find his soul again." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge looked up, startled. But I wasn't saying it for them. I was saying it for him, for the boy who used to chase butterflies in the garden, who once cried when he broke his toy, who used to whisper, "Mom, don't ever leave me." Tears streamed down his face as he fell to his knees. "I didn't mean to. I didn't think you'd survive. I just wanted to be free," he cried. "Free from what?" I asked softly. "From being the disappointment," he whispered. "From the debt, from failure, from everything. I thought if I could take the money, if I could start over, I'd make it right somehow." The courtroom faded away for a moment. I could only hear the sound of my heart breaking all over again. There was no monster in front of me, only a lost child who had made a decision too dark to undo. The judge, moved by the situation and our decision, sentenced him to a reduced term, years in a rehabilitation facility instead of prison. It wasn't mercy. It was hope. Hope that maybe one day the boy we lost could return. Months passed. We sold our house, moved to a small cottage by the sea. The air smelled of salt and forgiveness. My husband spent his days gardening, while I painted sunsets that reminded me of the night we almost died. Every now and then, a letter would arrive from our son. First they were short. "I'm sorry." Then they became longer. He wrote about his sessions, his regrets, his dreams. "I'm learning who I really am," he wrote once. "And I think I finally understand what love is supposed to mean." I cried over every letter. It wasn't the same as holding him, but it was something. Proof that the boy I once knew still lived somewhere inside the man who had betrayed us. One day after 2 years, the phone rang. It was the facility. They said he wanted to see us, that he was ready to apologize face to face. My heart raced as we drove there. Every mile a mix of fear and longing. When we walked into the visitor's room, he stood up slowly. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes were clearer. He didn't rush to hug us. Instead, he fell to his knees again like the day in court. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, voice trembling. "You don't have to deserve it," my husband said gently. "You just have to be willing to live differently." That was the moment our family began to heal. It didn't erase what happened. The cliff would always be a scar in our story. A place where we lost everything and somehow found the truth about love and survival. Years later, on a quiet afternoon, we returned to that same cliff. The wind howled softly through the grass, and the sun painted the sky gold. I stood near the edge, my husband's hand wrapped tightly around mine. We weren't there to mourn anymore. We were there to forgive, to let go. Our son joined us, standing a few feet away. He looked at the horizon and whispered, "This is where everything went wrong." I shook my head gently. "No," I said. "This is where we were reborn." He smiled faintly, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you for pretending to be dead that night," he said quietly. I looked at him, puzzled. "If you hadn't," he continued, "I would have spent the rest of my life running from what I did. You gave me a chance to face it, to change." I didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand, and for the first time in years, our fingers intertwined again. The wind carried away the weight of the past. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened, like a bruise fading under sunlight. We stayed there until the sun dipped below the horizon. As darkness settled, I whispered to myself, maybe this is what miracles look like. Not grand, not loud, just quiet forgiveness after all the noise. That night, back at our cottage, I wrote in my journal, "We survived the fall not because we were strong, but because we refused to let hate finish what gravity started." The story of that cliff will forever remain a shadow in our lives, but from that shadow a light was born. A light that reminded us that even when love breaks, it can still find a way to mend. Slowly, painfully, but beautifully. And as I closed my eyes to sleep that night, I whispered one final prayer. Thank you, God, for giving us back our son. So tell me, did you enjoy my story? And from which city in the world are you listening? Write your name and city in the comments. I'd really love to read them. If this story touched your heart, even a small thanks from you would mean more than words can say. Your love and support give me the strength to keep creating more stories for you, and I'll be eagerly waiting for your feedback. On your screen, you can now see 2 new life stories that I truly recommend you watch. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your one like and subscribe means so much to me. See you again in the next life story.